Patrick Brown, thank you for meeting with me. This is your book, Take Down the Attempted Political Assassination of Patrick Brown. Why did you write this book, and do you think it was a good idea in hindsight?
A great Christmas gift for the holiday season. In all seriousness, I wasn't talking to the media in January when I faced the adversity that I did and the horror of the false allegations that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And when I stopped talking to the media, and you can imagine how hurt I was by that period, a number of publishers came to me and said, you need to tell your side of the story. You need to explain what happened in the political process and how this changed the course of Ontario. And at first I said no. But then there was, I give Optimum Publishing credit. They said, no one knows what happens in political parties. No one understands what happens inside a caucus. There's a veil of secrecy around it. It's good for democracy to shine a light on that. And at the time, I didn't want to interfere with the provincial election. I had many good friends who were running as candidates. I was worried that aspects of the book, if I told the full story, would be controversial and cause ramifications in the provincial election. And frankly, I didn't want anyone who was a friend to lose because of what I may have shined a light on. And Optimum Publishing said that if I wrote the book, they would delay it until the fall, until well after the provincial election, and I felt comfortable with that. And frankly, highlighting what happened at Queen's Park and how duplicitous some people had been, and frankly, it was cathartic to highlight the ordeal that I had to go through.
When did you ink the deal with Optimum Publishing?
Was
it before you decided to run for chair and
Brampton long before that. Yeah, we began writing in March.
Okay.
And it was complete by June. At that time, the farthest thing I had from my mind was re-entering politics.
So politics is described as a blood sport, and in this book, you have taken it to a new level. I would call it a Game of Thrones kind of assassination type book. One of the people that you really take aim at is Lisa MacLeod, and it seems to be backfiring. There seems to be universal condemnation for your suggestion that people around her thought she was faking her mental health illness. Do you think you should have included that in the book in hindsight?
So Lisa MacLeod made comments without having read the book, saying that I suggested that, and it's actually the opposite. What I suggest in the book, and what I say very clearly, is despite the fact we ran against each other, you recall I defeated her for the Conservative leadership in 2014. Despite her being a political adversary, I put her on the front bench. I promoted her, I supported her, and when she faced her mental health challenges, I applauded her for having the courage to come forward. And at the time, what was not well known is that I faced internal opposition in the PC party for doing that. When she came forward, she was in the midst of a nomination challenge. She was about to lose her nomination. Goldie Gamera was the candidate challenging her, and I told Goldie she should have to run elsewhere, and Goldie agreed and ran in Canada. Another prominent Chinese businessman came forward with a bunch of memberships, so he was posed to defeat Lisa MacLeod in the nomination, and against the recommendation of the Eastern Ontario chair, against frankly her own former staff who were irate that I would overrule the party process. I highlighted in the book that I overruled all of them. I supported her throughout that ordeal, and the reason I said you always should give the benefit of the doubt, and what I was so disappointed by is despite always supporting her, despite our running against each other, she was the first to be vicious and attacking and supporting the false allegations.
She did speak out against you, and yes, she was the first that I remember interviewing at Queen's Park. However, you've raised the specter that people around her suggested she was faking mental health issues, which is an invisible illness, and many are taking great exception to that and saying you've crossed a line. Do you think you should have added that part in this book, in hindsight?
So I highlight that I oppose those in the party, and by the way, let me just say, those people are still there. The Eastern Ontario chair is still a party activist. It was well known in the party that people were saying those things. It wasn't a secret. It gained more attention when Lisa MacLeod said that I was saying that, but if you read the book, that's not the case. And so,
but you're raising the suggestion in the book that this was being talked about. Do you think that that's something that should be offside?
Well, listen, if I'd be surprised if people didn't know that was being talked about at the time. It was quite a debate in the party. It was quite a controversy.
But it wasn't out in the public.
And then in that case, the only thing I would say to that is that I think anyone who has the courage to come forward should be given the benefit of the doubt and supported, and that includes Lisa MacLeod.
Okay, so you're not really answering the question on whether you regret adding that in the book. You could have just taken those 2 sentences out and still made your point. That
Well,
you
and then certainly then it could have been phrased differently. I guess the way it could have been phrased is to say that I went out of my way to support her even when party operatives didn't.
Okay. Would you apologize to her for that?
Listen, if Lisa MacLeod feels offended by sharing what her staff and the party operatives said in Eastern Ontario at the time, then I apologize for sharing that, but I hope she knows that I overruled them and that I supported her, and that frankly I've saved the notes that she sent me thanking me for my support of her during that mental health ordeal. I have the email still on my computer where she thanked me for supporting her, and so I brought that up to highlight I'd gone out of my way to disqualify all her opposition, to support her 100%, and the fact that she was part of that effort to remove me from from provincial politics shows just how nasty politics can be, how vicious it can be. And if you read the story, if you read the book, I think you'd be shocked about how a political party can work.
Definitely. Let's talk about Vic Fedeli, another minister that you take direct aim at. You are accusing or saying that a woman accused him of sexual misconduct and he's dodged a bullet. Yet there's no proof. There's no victim coming forward. Are you not doing the same thing to him that you say the media did to you? And are you no better then?
So what I was saying in the book was the hypocrisy of Vic Fedeli. He knows that there was a legal negotiation where the former staff member's lawyer was in talks with Vic Fedeli. Whatever resolution was arrived at, I was gone by the time that happened. But there were serious allegations. What I couldn't believe at the time was that Vic would say a statement like, "I believe the false allegations, always believe the women," when in his own case he didn't. So it was just a double standard, and I don't get into any of the details. All I say was that there was a lawyer's letter, that it was being addressed, and that to this day I hope that it's been reconciled appropriately.
But bringing that up, the devastating consequences that can occur during this Me Too era.
The reality is there hasn't been any devastating consequences for Vic Fedeli. I think it shows you the hypocrisy of the situation. These were serious allegations, and at the time, frankly, if I recall, a lot of the media knew about them. The lawyer had started conversations with the media, but then they began the process of whatever resolution was arrived at. I don't know what the resolution was, but if I just underline, that speaks to the double standard and the hypocrisy, and why Vic would be out there saying those things when he knew he was in the middle of this mess.
If a victim hasn't come forward, isn't making a formal complaint, is this something that should become public? Is that fair?
And that's why I would never reference the contents of the letter, of the complaint. I would never reference the individual's name. Frankly,
but you're still putting that bomb out there, that nuclear bomb.
Well, that bomb was out there with 2 media outlets already.
It was on Twitter a little bit. It wasn't in the mainstream public.
Well, and if my book brings more attention to some of the hypocrisy and double standards at Queen's Park, then so be it. I realize that when I write a book, it gathers more attention. But everything we've talked about today was out there. This book seems to have been
in hush-hush circles, though.
More than hush-hush. The media were talking about it directly, but certainly my book, I believe, has brought more attention to some of this some of the hypocrisy at Queen's Park.
Vic Fedeli has said he has hired a lawyer and he will sue if necessary. Are you concerned about that?
No, you can go ahead.
No concerns.
Everything in the book is correct, and frankly, whatever resolution Vic has arrived at with that individual, that's between him and that individual. It's not for me to get involved in, and I hope that both parties are satisfied with how it's been addressed.
So I'm told there was an investigation, a third-party investigation. I'm told by the PC party there was an investigation. The woman did not take part in it, did not respond to questions or participate in any way, and it ended up being dropped.
So I would say you'd have to speak to the parties involved. I'm not going to offer any other comment on that.
Are you comfortable an investigation was held?
You have to ask the parties involved.
All right. Let's move on to this book in general. And you signed the contract with the publisher before you decided to run for chair of Peel Region and before you decided to run for mayor of Brampton. Do you think this book is going to hurt you or help you long term? And you know, I was at Queen's Park yesterday, and the PC party is pretty angry at you.
Well, those that were involved in pushing me out as the leader of the party, frankly, they were not going to be close fans or friends of mine to start with. Frankly, they were very active in the campaign supporting my opponent in this mayoral campaign in Brampton. And so to suggest that there was any friendship lost, I think would be a stretch.
But now they seem to be united against you, in an even stronger way.
You wouldn't have
perhaps
believed how vicious they were in the municipal campaign, setting up third-party PACs, actively sending staff and campaign managers to support my opponent in this civic election.
I remember against Linda Jeffrey.
And so it was as vicious as you can imagine. But at the end of the day, the people opted for a different approach. Let me say this: it's in Doug Ford's self-interest to invest in Brampton. He has seats here. If you want to stay as
only a couple.
If you want to become premier or prime minister, you need to win seats in the 905. You need to win seats in Brampton. Tell me the last premier or prime minister who won a majority government without winning seats in Brampton.
But do you think this book will hurt Brampton?
No, because it's in Doug Ford's self-interest if he wants to stay in power to deliver. And frankly, I think where Doug Ford, the day after the municipal election, canceled the university in Brampton, Markham, and Milton, and his cold shoulder to Brampton might have disappointed many. The reality is most municipal projects are funded one-third, one-third, one-third. Yes. And one of the first phone calls I got after that was from the Prime Minister, who said that he's open to helping, he's open to being of assistance and to send us what Brampton's needs are. And so
is that politics too? Because there's no love lost between him and Doug Ford.
Well, what's ever happening there, the fact that we have a federal government who seems to be increasingly interested in helping Brampton, I'll take as a good sign, and I hope that over time the provincial government will also be more mature and appreciate the need to support Brampton's needs on transit, on education, and healthcare. And frankly, the old approach in Brampton was just simply to be an apologist to whatever the provincial government wanted, to suck up. That's not going to be my approach. The old approach has got us this reality. We have 60% less healthcare beds, 60% less healthcare beds in Brampton. We're getting 90% less in some cases on transit projects. We're massively underfunded, and being nice, being an apologist doesn't wash. I want the people of Brampton to get the same per capita funding on transit, on education, on healthcare as every other municipality. I don't think that's too much to ask. Did
Doug Ford eliminate the chair of Peel Region to get back at you and keep you out of politics?
Well, I'm not a mind reader. You'd have to ask.
What
Doug.
Do you think?
I'm not gonna.
Oh, I'm sure you have an opinion.
Listen, I'm not going to make an assessment. Ultimately, only Doug Ford knows why he makes those decisions.
Are you going to be satisfied being the mayor of Brampton? Or
Absolutely.
Do you? No, I don't mean it satisfied. I can sense that you are really excited about it. is that going to be enough for you long term? Are you
Absolutely.
already plotting what you're going to do after this?
No, listen, I'm so excited at this task of getting Brampton back on track. This was a city that was hurting. We're going to turn things around. We're going to open up Brampton for business. We're going to make Brampton a safe community. I'm so excited of what we can do here. And as you know, one of my closest friends in provincial politics, a person that I took great inspiration from, was former Premier Bill Davis. And now I live a block away from him. I talk to him almost every other day about making Brampton the envy of Ontario, the envy of Canada. And so maybe it's not on a provincial level that I get to work with my former mentor, but we get to work in the beautiful city of Brampton together, and I'm loving it.
I was there that night in January when there was a hastily caused news conference. I think I had 20 minutes notice to rush down there late at night. While you were making that statement, you had people in the hallway quitting on Twitter. There seemed to be absolutely no loyalty around you, which you talk about in this book. Do you think you contributed yourself to that situation, being so vulnerable in there? Why is it that nobody around you was standing up for you and supporting you?
So let me say this: there was 3 individuals who quit, and for that, I talk about that in the book. The lessons you can learn from that. The people that had worked with me over the years, the people who had helped me on the leadership campaign, the people that had helped me in my previous campaigns, they were all there. They were all incredibly supportive, loyal friends. The 3 people that we brought on, for the purpose of the provincial election, we hired sort of mercenaries who had been conservative campaign experts in Ottawa. The ones that we had brought on for the purpose of the election, who were hired guns, well, hired guns are only loyal to the paycheck, and as soon as there was a moment of adversity, they fled.
But your entire caucus and cabinet turned on you too.
Well, I didn't have a cabinet. I was the
right. I'm so sorry.
leader.
Of course, your caucus turned on you.
Members of caucus did, but frankly, there was a number of caucus members who were incredibly supportive. The caucus chair, Toby Barrett, was there with me, completely supportive. Rick Nichols, Ross Romano. There was a number of caucus members that were incredibly supportive, but obviously some of my political adversaries took advantage of CTV's false reporting and used it to bring about a very significant change in the conservative movement in Ontario.
You're blaming everyone else in this book. Oh, do you carry any blame whatsoever?
Of course, I own responsibility for. Ultimately, the buck stops at the leader. You are responsible for those you hire. I didn't do my due diligence on who I hired. That the mercenaries I brought on became a massive weakness. I was so busy doing events, so consumed with my role as opposition leader that, frankly, when it came to human resources, I didn't do the due diligence. I didn't do the homework that I should have, and that was a major mistake.
My last question, because I'm getting the wrap. You've recently become married. You seem to have risen from the ashes against many people's expectations. How is Patrick Brown now?
I'm feeling great. I'm away from the viciousness of Queen's Park, and I'm happy to be away from it. The people of Brampton have been so wonderful, kind, supportive. I go around the city, and it's a warm community. There's a real sense of family, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it, and the fact that I've taken the time to reassess priorities in life, to get settled down, to get married. I've got this incredible life partner in Genevieve, and I'm very happy.
Do you think maybe it's all worked out?
They say that God has a reason for everything, and the way. Listen, I wouldn't have wished what I've gone through on my worst enemy, but I'm very happy with where I've landed.
Patrick Brown, thank you very much.
Thank you.